The committee will come to order without objection. The chair is authorized to declare a recess of the committee at any time. The chair now yields himself 6.5 minutes for an opening statement. This morning we welcome back Director Cordray to deliver testimony on the 5th semi-annual report of the CFPB. Protecting consumers within interstate commerce is a vitally important mission of the federal government. And properly designed, the CFPB is capable of great good on behalf of consumers. It is also capable of great harm. In just 3 years, the CFPB has grown into an unaccountable federal leviathan of nearly 1,400 employees with over a $500 million budget and the unrestrained power to dictate which Americans can receive credit and which Americans cannot. Knowledgeable Americans are rightfully alarmed as the threat and the harm begins to mount. Since Director Cordray last appeared before our committee in January, we have learned much. First, we have learned in the first quarter of this year, we actually had negative economic growth of 1%. And whether you speak to practically any small business person in our country, any community banker, they will tell you that the sheer weight, volume, complexity of the regulatory red tape burden is one of the primary reasons that they cannot expand and hire more people. We hear, for example, from Barry in Chicago. He says he owns a small insurance company. But he said, quote, "I spend most of my days on the CFPB website reading through all the regulations and trying to implement them into our system. My loan officers can't believe all the new complicated forms, and our borrowers are all confused. The CFPB is adding such cost to the business that only Wells Fargo, Chase, and B of A will be left for consumers to obtain loans." Regrettably, this is not a unique piece of correspondence. It is one way that the CFPB is regrettably harming consumers and helping keep people underemployed and unemployed. We have also learned since Director Cordray's last appearance that the CFPB is incurring even more cost on its building renovation. What was then going to cost an estimated $145 million is now costing at least $184 million, according to information provided by the Bureau itself. That is $30 million more than the building is even worth, a building we must remember that the CFPB does not even own. This is what happens, I believe, when an agency is essentially unaccountable to the people. Even more troubling, we have learned since Director Cordray was last before the committee, that the joint database project of the CFPB and the FHFA will undeniably collect personally identifiable information on millions of Americans in the National Mortgage Database. I'm not speaking merely of names, addresses, phone numbers, though the database will certainly include those, but shockingly also people's Social Security numbers, their race, their religion, personal financial information, and even the GPS coordinates to their homes. If this is not considered personally identifiable information by the CFPB, then I don't know what is. A breach of this database could cause untold harm to consumers by the very agency that purports to protect them. Without a doubt, this National Mortgage Database is an unwarranted and shocking intrusion into the privacy of American citizens. It is a database I would fully expect to see in either Russia or China, but I am appalled to see it in the United States of America. And I predict as more Americans become aware of this, they too will be appalled and will demand accountability from this administration. Next, we clearly have the most appalling development that has occurred since Director Cordray's last appearance here. Independently corroborated reports of widespread discrimination and abuse of employees at CFPB. Not merely virtual discrimination, not merely theoretical discrimination or statistical discrimination, but appalling acts of actual discrimination. Since these allegations first came to light, this committee has served as a virtual trauma unit for employees who have come forward to report discrimination, retaliation, and other apparent violations of law at the CFPB. And although our committee has publicly invited aggrieved employees from every other federal agency within our jurisdiction to come forward if they have experienced discrimination or retaliation, so far, the only ones who have come forward all work or have worked for the CFPB. Most wish to remain anonymous because they fear retaliation. But as you prepare to give your testimony, Director Cordray, I have no doubt you are aware that we will publicly hear from other whistleblowers this afternoon, including one, Mr. Kevin Williams, whose testimony has already been delivered to the committee, who will testify later this afternoon about the CFPB, quote, the frequency and duration of these occurrences, and speaking of discrimination, created a hostile work environment for all blacks at the Bureau, whether they were unwitting, manipulated black managers, or mistreated hardworking black employees. It's just that we, the latter, suffered the objectively adverse consequences. Again, this whistleblower testimony is not unique. I have no doubt that all agree, including the director, that invidious discrimination and retaliation are not only illegal, they are also morally repugnant. And until I heard it with my own ears, I never would have believed that a federal office in the 21st century would commonly be referred to as the plantation. I, for one, am uninterested in hearing how the system is to blame, Director Cordray. I'm uninterested in hearing about plans to conduct listening sessions and hiring consultants when the real problem is the people you have hired to help run this Bureau. These disturbing developments once again demonstrate, I believe, conclusively why there must be substantial structural reform at the CFPB. Consumers deserve accountability not only from Wall Street, but they deserve it from Washington too. Yet by design, the CFPB remains, arguably, the least accountable Washington bureaucracy in the history of America, and it shows. This must change. The chair now recognizes the ranking member for 5 minutes for an opening statement.